Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is David Daoud, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. David, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
I want to talk about the latest in the Israel-Hamas war because there have been some significant developments in the past few days, so I would love to get your reaction to them. Let's start with Monday. The last living American hostage was released. You're in Israel. What's the mood on the ground? Tell us about the country's reaction.
Well, look, Israel, it's still a lively country. Life is proceeding almost like normal, except for the fact that you feel the war everywhere. You walk down the street, there are posters of hostages, of soldiers who have been killed, young soldiers. These guys are 18 to 21 during their basic service. And hostage squares filled every Saturday. I was actually there when Idan Alexander was released. There's a sense of relief with every hostage released, but then there's also a sense that even when you're done with that, the mission isn't over. You're watching Israeli news simultaneously, and he's the last American or hostage with American citizenship who was released. But then there are Israelis who don't have foreign citizenship. And I remember Einat Tsungalka, who's the mother of one of the hostages, saying, well, what about them? Are they worth less simply because they have Israeli citizenship? And that, there's this desire to get this war done and to almost to get the hostage. Polls seem to be going in that direction. So it's almost a fixation on getting these, I guess now, depends on whose numbers you vote, 23 to 20 living hostages left, getting them back home.
What do people make of Netanyahu's leadership right now? Because, as you said, this was the last hostage with American citizenship released. What do people in Israel make of the fact that U.S. officials negotiated with Qatar and Egypt? How are they feeling toward Netanyahu?
I think it depends. Look, the majority of the country, according to polls, does not have a favorable view of this government, including people who had voted for this government prior to the war. You have majority of people want a hostage deal at any price. I think that group of people is going to look at it and say that Idan Alexander was released in spite of Netanyahu's efforts, and that Prime Minister Netanyahu was actually hampering the return of the hostages. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu himself, look, he's a political genius, that we can say about him. And he was trying to spin Idan's release as a result of his policy of forcing Hamas to negotiate under fire, rather than as a result of American mediation. Now that will play to his base and will play to the Channel 14 crowd. That's kind of the group of Israelis that really are committed to the Netanyahu government. They'll look at it and say, well, no, it was Prime Minister Netanyahu's policy of pursuing this war until total victory, of forcing Hamas to negotiate under fire, that forced Hamas to let's say be more conciliatory, but force them to give up this very important card in their hands. And others, say the majority of the country right now, would disagree with that because of their unfavorable view of this government.
I want to read exactly what Netanyahu said about Idan Alexander's release. That he said this, quote, "This was achieved thanks to our military pressure and the diplomatic pressure applied by President Trump. This is a winning combination. And I spoke with President Trump today. He said, I am committed to Israel, to continuing to work with you in close cooperation in order to achieve all of our war objectives, releasing all of the hostages and defeating Hamas." What do you make of what he said? Because you're right, he is seemingly trying to take credit there. Do people believe that Israel was cut out of these negotiations? What does that really look like?
There is a growing sense now, various moves by the Trump administration, according to Yediot Ahronot, a major newspaper in Israel. Pete Hegseth was supposed to Defense Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Sorry, I'm on Israeli mode where everyone's a minister here. Was supposed to visit Israel, and that visit was canceled. Simultaneously, you have President Trump, and members of his cabinet, his administration, in the Gulf, meeting with Saudi officials. Today, there was a very dramatic meeting with Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara. And there's a sense of kind of winds of optimism blowing in the Gulf's direction, or being led by the Gulf, and kind of policies that the Gulf states would like to see. And so there's no visit to Israel, and the Israelis aren't necessarily being consulted. There's also the move towards a deal with Iran, that the president is pursuing. Now, there was this idea of if Iran doesn't come to the table and give in to the president's demands peacefully, the bombers are ready in Diego Garcia to launch, except those bombers, as far as we know, have been pulled back. So again, there's this sense that that the Trump administration is trying to do what the Trump administration wants to do, which is to make deals, to get down to business, to pursue the path of prosperity. And Israel's being left behind. And look, that may be true in the sense that given what the Trump administration's priorities are now, President Trump, for all of his bombastic rhetoric, he's not a warmonger. He doesn't like war. He doesn't like conflict. He likes to make deals, and he likes to make deals that he believes benefit the United States. And right now, Israel, given the position it's in, can't give him any deal. And you could say, well, he wants the Gaza war over. He said that before even taking office. Israel can't give him that. Now, is that because Prime Minister Netanyahu is interested, as some will say, in holding on to his coalition and lengthening the war helps him hold on to that coalition? Or is it because genuinely the only correct policy for the future of the state of Israel is to pursue this conflict for as long as it takes to erode Hamas and force it to give up its governmental and military influence in the Gaza Strip? That's a question for other people to decide. But the conclusion is that Israel can't give the deal, whereas, say, Qatar, Saudi Arabia can produce deals, and that feeds into President Trump's instincts.
I mean, should we read into it too closely that President Trump, his first major foreign trip in his second term, he's going to the Middle East, he's visiting the UAE, he's visiting Saudi Arabia, he's visiting Qatar. The trip is focused on, as you said, business deals, not foreign policy, but he's not visiting our biggest ally in the Middle East, Israel. What does that say about U.S.-Israel relations, if anything?
It's hard to disconnect the economic and the business deals from the political. Look, I don't know if there's an intentional parallel, but if we go back to President Obama's first visit to the region, it deliberately excluded Israel as a signal to the Muslim world that, look, we're extending the olive branch. This is President Obama's advisors who told him, leave the Israelis out of this for now, extend the olive branch to the Arab world, given that this was coming off, the tension between the United States and the Arab and Islamic world, given former President Bush's policies. Is there something in there now? Perhaps. We are not necessarily. What is the relationship? Trump's foreign policy. It's largely built on personal relationships. He really cares about the personal, and we know that during the years when he was out of office, he was very displeased with Prime Minister Netanyahu for various reasons. There was talk, reports that he was frustrated with Prime Minister Netanyahu's what Trump put it, his unwillingness to pursue the peace deals that Trump wanted him to pursue vis-a-vis the Palestinians. There was frustration over Prime Minister Netanyahu being one of the first, if not the first, foreign leader to congratulate President Biden after the contentious 2020 election. And then more recently, there's been talk of frustration with Prime Minister Netanyahu for not having Israel join in the Qasem Soleimani strike. So there's already this built-in frustration with Prime Minister Netanyahu. And if we look at the advisors that President Trump is surrounding himself with, they're taking a course that is at cross ends with how Israel would like to see some aspect of U.S. policy in the Middle East. And that could lead to more of an alienation from Israel. And those same advisors would like to take the United States into a direction that is favored by our Gulf partners, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the UAE. Now, whether that's the right course or the wrong course, again, separate question. But there seems to be that direction in the administration to move the United States more towards an alignment with the Gulf and not Israel. Whereas now, the first Trump administration, the Gulf and Israel were almost, with the exception of Qatar, were almost fully aligned. Now, because of the Gaza war, there is a disalignment. So if you go with the Gulf, you may necessarily be excluding Israel, but Gulf comes with deals. Israel does not at this moment.
And there's a definite tone shift between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu when it comes to the end of this war. I want to read something that Trump posted after Idaan Alexander was released. Quote, "This was a step taken in good faith towards the United States and the efforts of the mediators, Qatar and Egypt, to put an end to this very brutal war and return all living hostages and remains to their loved ones. Hopefully this is the first of those final steps necessary to end this brutal conflict." And Netanyahu said earlier this week that there is, quote, "no way we will stop the war, even if Hamas releases more hostages, until Hamas is defeated. So what do you make of these differing messages here?
Again, they're almost at cross ends. Look, in terms of, if I were Hamas, I want to, I just saw the United States and come to a ceasefire with the Houthis. Israel's left out in the cold at a time where, right after Ben Gurion Airport was almost struck. So maybe I give the United States what it wants to get it off my back, the last living American hostage. We know that President Trump cares about the lives of American citizens, including the lives of dual citizens and dual citizens abroad. He killed Qasem Soleimani because Iraqi Shia militias had armed U.S. persons, a U.S. citizen. So if I'm Hamas, I'm going to, kind of try to isolate Israel by no longer having an American citizen there. And then it's just between me and the Israelis. And that sharpens the divergence between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Especially, again, you're sitting as Hamas. I think it's a very strange statement to say that Hamas is acting in good faith or with goodwill. This is a brutal terrorist organization. It's an FTO. So I find that a very strange statement from the White House. But again, these guys are adept at creating this kind of impression about themselves. And that President Trump is coming in already on a platform that he wants this war over. So do you want to create disinterest on the part of the president by saying, look, we have no more Americans. You personally have nothing to seek here anymore. It's just between us and Israel. And that helps to isolate the Israelis. And then you have the Qataris working a different angle. They have the ear of the administration. At the same time, they're one of the primary sponsors of Hamas, not just financially. If you look at their soft power, right, they are the biggest spreaders of anti-American, not just anti-Israel, but anti-American ideology through, their large media apparatuses. Jazeera is the biggest known one. We have Al-Arabi, Al-Jadid, and so on and so forth. But they know how to play the angle. They know how to play both sides of the coin. So you have Hamas giving up its last American asset, and you have Qatar, which has the administration's ear pushing in a direction that would satisfy its own interests, but maybe not necessarily our American interests in the long term.
Do you think by Hamas giving up the last living American hostage, do you think by Qatar perhaps giving that $400 million plane allegedly for Air Force One, do you think that in tandem they're almost pulling one over on the Trump administration?
I think, I don't know if I want to call it that, but I think there is an attempt to use softer tactics to appeal to the Trump administration. Qatar is excellent at that. Putting the $400 million plane aside, you look at how the Qataris have positioned themselves to influence not just, we talk about Qatari influence in different areas of American public life. For almost a decade, they've been trying to influence the conservative side of the angle, including the pro-Israel side of the angle. We have a lot of prominent American officials that frequent visitors to Qatar that genuinely view Qatar as an uncomplicated ally, right? Qatar is a partner, although Data Air Base is there for a reason, but that's one side of the Qatari game. The other side, again, is to spread and perpetuate anti-Americanism in the region through its soft power apparatuses. So they know how to work the game. They know how to, they built relations with the conservative side of the angle. And this is kind of culminated in I don't want to call it the more ISIS wing, but kind of the harder wing of the MAGA movement. And look at the interview with Tucker Carlson. I don't think they've given him any money, but they've bought him hook, line, and sinker through this soft power approach, through convincing him that they are an uncomplicated ally of the United States. And it seems like the Trump administration coming in now, their ear is inclined more to say, to the Tucker Carlson wing of the Republican Party than say the Mike Pompeo wing of the Republican Party. And the Qataris, again, have succeeded in pushing their influence on them. So look, $400 million plane there or not, the Qataris are working a very long game, and it seems to be paying off. And that our foreign policy seems to be going in a direction that they would like to see.
Do you think from that perspective then that Qatar is an ally of the United States, or should Qatar be an ally of the United States? I mean, what do you make of all of that?
Look, I think to me, I'm obsessed with soft power. I'm obsessed with the idea of narrative, because that forms reality. No matter what you do in hard reality, I think perception more often than not matters more than reality. And if you're a country that is basing its regional influence, Qatar is a small country with a small population that has a lot of oil reserves that are going to run out one day. They want regional influence, they want global influence, and the way they're doing that is through soft power. Now, in and of itself, that's a neutral thing. What are they putting into that soft power? They're trying to play on pre-existing anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, anti-Israel sentiments in the region. They're trying to perpetuate those sentiments. Again, not just the anti-Israel, anti-Semitism, but also anti-Americanism, anti-Westernism. In the long run, Qatar is playing a game where it ensures that this part of the world maintains a certain hostile disposition to the West and to the United States. So do you call that a partner? I wouldn't call it a partner. Maybe they haven't attacked us directly, but if you're sponsoring Hamas, if you have relations with the Taliban, and sometimes we use that to our advantage as the United States. But what if you're fueling the next ISIS ideology through all this anti-Westernism that you're pumping into the Arab world through Al Jazeera, but through other media outlets as well? I don't know if I would consider that a friend. Right? If I were talking about a personal friendship and I had someone who'd never laid a hand on me, but the entire time was gossiping about me, I don't know if I would call that a friend.
I do now want to turn back to what you see next in the Israel-Hamas war, because Netanyahu, as I said earlier, he said there's no way we will stop the war until they defeat Hamas. On Wednesday, Israel launched an airstrike on Gaza. This came after Netanyahu promised escalation in the region. I mean, what do you make of this latest operation, and what do you see as the next or final stages of this war?
Look, I think partially there's, look, in every war, especially in this war, there's an emphasis on symbolism, killing commanders, killing high-ranking commanders. If you kill Mohammed Sinwar, who was the target of the strike, we still don't know if he was killed. There's a symbolic element to this, that you are pushing the war forward, that you're bringing Hamas closer to dissolution. May not necessarily be so, but it gives that impression. It buys this government more time. It is a win for this government to turn to the U.S. administration and say, look, we're not just wasting time here with continuing this war. We're actually making advances. We're actually succeeding. At the same time, look, the Netanyahu government has said, if I'm not mistaken, that 10 living hostages have to be released, and that'll result in kind of a similar ceasefire to what we had before the resumption of hostilities. So I think it was like a 40-day ceasefire or something. If Hamas releases 10 hostages, it's not a permanent end to the war, but it's something that would be kind of sort of a humanitarian lull, with discussions for what would happen to the future depending on how many more hostages Hamas would release. So there's the tough rhetoric, there's the symbolism, there's also an attempt to show flexibility because you have pressure from the American government. Steve Witkoff's talking about ending this war, the president's talking about ending this war, and again, there's tremendous pressure from within the Israeli public to see the hostages return home. So you have to give into that as well. You have to cater to the Israeli public as well to alleviate pressure off of the government. And again, is that a tactical move to continue the war later on? We'll see.
Well, David, there's certainly a lot to look out for next, and I hope you continue to join me and break it all down. David Daoud, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Looking forward to future conversations as well.